All right, so this month, Venus just got exalted. And I want you to decide whether or not it's coincidence that Valentine's Day is also happening this month. That's a whole different conversation. I don't even want to talk about what's really going on right now in the transits that's going on with Venus, because right now I could talk about how the exaltation of Venus is affecting us in the fact that the sun is in Aquarius right now, or in the fact that Mars is in Gemini right now. You know what I'm saying? Or in the fact that the moon, I think, just left Virgo, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't want to talk about those things. Those are transit type situations. I want to talk about more so just the exaltation of Venus in general. See what I'm saying? So this is not a timely message. This is more like a timeless message. You get what I'm saying? But me being the Knight of Venus, the soul of Andromeda, aka comma motherfucking sense, I am exalted, and sometimes because of that, just me saying that, the things that I do, whatever the case may be, sometimes it might look like I act with ego, or I act as though I view myself higher than, which isn't necessarily the case, you know. And see, the reason I say I'm exalted is because my sun is exalted, my moon is exalted as a Aries sun, Taurus moon. So I know a thing or two about exaltation energy. That being said, there's a lot that comes with it. And it's a dangerous game. Whenever you're working with planets in exaltation, whenever we're going through transits when the planets are being exalted, if you are born with exaltations, you hear a lot of astrologers say good things about it. You know what I'm saying? And exaltation has positive connotations around it in the astrology community. But again, I'm experienced with exaltation, so I can tell you a thing or two about it. And the thing about exaltations is you can easily get exhausted in these energies. You know what I'm saying? The first astrologer I actually heard actually say that like that is Dolo the Pilot Man. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Dolo the Pilot Man. But that being said, yeah, that's some real key information to take into account. Whenever you have something that's being exalted, you now have access to being exhausted. Now, before I start breaking down even deeper, you know what I'm saying? Let's just look at what exalted means in general. Because, this channel here is not going to be so much so on just basic astrology. And I don't want to go so far as to say it's advanced astrology either. In me saying that alone, that could be looking like I'm being egotistic. You see what I'm saying? But I do want to say this is not like ordinary astrology. Okay, let's put it like that. This is not like basic astrology. I'm going to just put it like that. When you come to my channel, you're going to get a little bit more than what you normally hear. So that being said, right, I do want to give you like just the stepping stones to get there. So looking at exaltations, I would have assumed you already know what that means since you're on my channel, but just to give you those stepping stones, exalted basically means the highest point. You know what I'm saying? The highest degree. You know what I'm saying? At its highest point in the sky. Or even if you just look at exalted in the dictionary, the full potential, the fullest expression of something. Now these, again, positive connotations. Now, when we look at it deeply in the definition of being exalted, being at the highest potential of something, the highest degree of something. What comes from what comes from going so high? You know what I'm saying? That there's another thing too for all my mystics and the occultists out there. If you don't know your mythologies, start getting into them right now, because there are keys in those stories and allegories. And the key that I want to give you right now is from the story of Icarus. You know what I'm saying? The boy with wings who flew too closely to the sun that his wings melted. Or some shit like that, right? Think about that. That's getting into the allegory of what happens when you exalt yourself and exhaust yourself. Or when a planet does the same. When you go too high, you have no choice but to end up coming back down. And when you go down, it's going to be even harder of a drop, harder of a fall, more fatal of a fall, if you will. You understand what I'm trying to say? And we can see that just in reality. That's how gravity works. The higher you go, the harder the fall. You see what I'm saying? So that takes into the understanding, like, whenever a planet is at its highest degree, at its highest potential, and now it has access to fall straight down, bring you into, should I say, lower frequency scenarios. That's the best way I can put it. So just beware of, that aspect, because there's two sides of the same coin. When you're talking about the exaltation, you have to talk about the fall. The complete opposite of it. So with the exaltation of Venus being in Pisces, the fall will be in Virgo. Now, I'll do a separate video talking about the fall of Venus. I'll do that later. But right now, even though I said this is a timeless message, it's timely right now in the reality that I'm speaking from, because, like I said, right now, this month, Venus is exalted. So I'm going to cater to those energies. So that's what this video is going to be about. Now that we got a small aspect of what comes with exaltations, that is the fall. You know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, they're two sides of the same coin. That's why I brought that up. Pisces and Virgo, two sides of the same coin when it comes to this Venus energy. The exaltation and the fall. Now, that whole coin in general represents the value of, well, just the value. You know what I'm saying? Like, because each side of the coin, there is no value until both of those sides come together. You see what I'm saying? The coin is worthless with just one face. You need both heads and tails of a coin for that coin to actually be meaningful. So, that being said, excuse me, I'm sorry. So that being said, my fault. So that being said, when we look at Pisces and Virgo, the exaltation and the fall of Venus, these are two sides of the same coin when it comes to service. You get what I'm saying? Service. Where you have the fall of Venus representing a more mundane service, a more physical service, a more practical sense of service. And then you have the exaltation of Venus, a more metaphysical act of service, a more spiritual sense of service, a more mystical, if you will, act of service. Now, I'm not here to talk about which one is right or wrong, which one is good or bad, because, like I said, the two sides of the same coin. At the end of the day, we're talking about service, whether we're talking about practical, mundane, day-to-day work, or we're talking about the imaginative, creative work that allows for the mundane work. We're not talking about which one is greater than the other or which one came first, because this isn't that type of video. Even though I'm going to talk about the exaltation right now, I'm going to talk about a lot of things that come with the exaltation, a lot of bad things that come with the exaltation. This isn't about right or wrong, light and dark. You see what I'm saying? This is about just understanding the energies in general so that we can best use these energies when we move forward. You see what I'm saying? It's about gaining a sense of direction. Because, see, here's the thing, right? As I continue to say they're two sides of the same coin, you're going to understand, you know, you're going to understand the magic, and being able to play between the lines, you know what I'm saying? And being able to flip the coin to see both sides instead of just looking at it from one side. But I'll get there. Back to what I'm saying, though, in terms of the exaltation. So now that we got a general understanding, right, that with being exalted, you have also access to now being in the fall, right? One thing that we need to understand that, actually, you know what? I'm gonna just go off of that topic, okay? Going more so into what I really want to talk about, because I don't want to talk about just exaltation in general, because I can just go on and on and on about the allegories of what comes with an exaltation. Because you will hear, like I said, this ain't basic astrology now. Now I'm getting to the roots of the shit. Like, you hear a whole bunch of people talk about exaltations, but don't know where it comes from, or what it means actually, or how to connect the dots between all this shit, and how this exaltation is still the same in this sign, but it's not, you see what I'm saying? But whatever, fuck it. That's a different conversation. What I want to talk about is a specific exaltation. As you can tell by the title of the video, the exaltation of Venus, what I already started off with, right? Now, the thing is the exaltation of Venus happens in the sign of Pisces, like I said. And to understand the exaltation of Venus, we now need to understand what Pisces is, right? I already broke down in brief what an exaltation is. And Venus, for the most part, I'm the Knight of Venus. I already told y'all what Venus is. But for the most part, Venus is your values. Venus are the things that you're willing to sacrifice for. Venus are the things that you relate with and how you choose to relate. Venus represents your creativity, your art. You see what I'm saying? Venus also represents the things that give you stability, that give you comfort to a certain degree. There's different forms of that too. But for the most part, Venus are your values. Okay? Now, in terms of Pisces, Pisces is constructed by Jupiter and Neptune, as well as the 12th house, the home of Pisces. To understand all of that, Jupiter is all about experience. And see, when you gain experience, the only way you gain, here's the thing about experience. I want to say this thing about Jupiter is when you do something constantly, you continuously go through something. Or even if it's not constantly, if you go through something one time, that's an experience. But once you go through that experience, you now have an insight. You now have a greater understanding. You now have a new perspective on something. See what I'm saying? And now with this perspective, if you go into other experiences with this perspective now, you now have the ability to hold wisdom, knowledge. You see what I'm saying? Especially if you start going through a lot of experience, which you gotta take into account Jupiter being one of the biggest planets in our solar system, right? If not the biggest. Or is that Saturn? I think they neck and neck, I don't know, but Jupiter is up there, right? So Jupiter represents grandiose things, the big shit, expansion. So taking that into account, whenever you have a lot of experiences, you know now have the ability to gain more wisdom, gain more knowledge. Because with lots of experiences, you're gonna have lots of fails, lots of setbacks. You're gonna fuck up a lot. A lot of people are afraid of that. They're afraid to experience shit. But we're here to experience. Believe it or not, we're here to fail, to figure out how to fix that shit. Because that's how you gain wisdom. That's how you gain knowledge. Because once you go through those experiences and you experience those failures and you look back on it, you can learn something from it. And then when you go through those experiences again with that knowledge, you can now rewrite the fucking outcome, rewrite how the story ends now, because you now know how to actually move in this story because you have the wisdom, the experience. You get what I'm saying? This is all Jupiter. Now, this is more on the side of the ninth house of Jupiter, the other side of Jupiter, Sag. But see, with your experiences, they shape your beliefs. See what I'm saying? What are your beliefs shaped from? Other than the things that you have witnessed, the things that you have seen, the things that you have gone through and experienced. You see what I'm saying? Once you go through enough shit, enough times, you'll start to have a certain belief around things. You get pulled over by cops enough times for no fucking reason, and it seems like they harassing you, you're going to start to have the belief that cops like to harass you or like to harass people like you. You see what I'm saying? And then things like that happen. Like your experience starts to shape your beliefs. Now this is getting to the other side of Jupiter. The side that we're here to talk about today. Pisces. The 12th house. So Jupiter being your experiences and your wisdom, you know, also, as well as your beliefs, your belief systems. That also looks like what? What else shapes belief systems? Spirituality, religion, you know, hell, sometimes even the government construct shapes all that shit. But for the most part, right? That's Jupiter. That's Jupiter. And another thing to take into account when we're talking about Pisces, because if that's Jupiter taken into account in the ninth house, for the most part, when we're talking about going through experiences and things like that to shape our wisdom, the way it plays out in the 12th house is Jupiter now has Neptune there. Because Neptune isn't in the ninth house. You know what I'm saying? With Jupiter, like for Sag. It's only in the 12th house for Pisces. So when Jupiter comes to the 12th house, Neptune's there. So Neptune represents everything that deals with illusions, imaginations, creativity, the Maya, for those who are familiar with Hindu mythology and mysticism. Neptune is the realm of the illusion. You see what I'm saying? The imagination. So when you have Jupiter here with Neptune, now we're talking about experiencing the imagination. You know, because everyone has an imagination. But then you have some people who say, I don't have an imagination, or he doesn't have an imagination. Why do people say that? If we know for a fact everyone has an imagination, why do we have instances where people say he doesn't have an imagination? It's because it's not that they don't have an imagination. It's that they probably don't have enough access in their chakras alignment to live out their imagination and live in their imagination and express it. You see what I'm saying? They don't have that understanding. They don't have that wisdom on how to experience their imagination or find a way for everyone else to experience their imagination with them. You see what I'm saying? And this is what Jupiter and Neptune is talking about. Having that ability to actually live in that imagination and bring it out and not be afraid to bring it out and show it to people, and dive into your imagination and analyze it and try to gain wisdom and gain knowledge from your imagination. Try to understand your imagination. Try to gain some type of insight from your imagination. You see what I'm saying? That's what Jupiter and Neptune does together. And then that's what creates the 12th house. That's what creates Pisces. Now, when we're talking about a whole bunch of experience, because let's not forget, Jupiter is an expansive planet. It's the biggest planet, one of the biggest, I should say. Not the biggest, I don't know. One of the biggest. So wherever Jupiter is, it expands shit. You see what I'm saying? So that being said, with Jupiter in the same house as Neptune, it now expands the imagination. It expands the illusions. This is what creates the collective conscious. Because now it's no longer just an individual imagination. Now it's many imaginations. Now it's no longer just your experience. Now it's many experiences. You understand what I'm saying? That's the 12th house. Now, the thing about that is, one thing I want to talk about too, because I did a video on this yesterday, a little short, talking about experiences. You have two types of experiences. You have a subjective experience, and you have an objective experience. That is, you have an individual experience, and then you have a collective experience. Now, I want to ask you, which one is the most important? Which one came first? Which one holds the most value? Now, see, I'm testing you. I'm trying to test you, see if you've been listening. If you've been listening, I already gave you the answer to that. They're two sides of the same coin. See what I'm saying? And a coin would not exist with just one face. So both need to exist in order to have some substance, in order to have some value, in order to exist. So going back to my question, what's more important, the subjective experience or the objective experience? We'll come back to that. But I already gave you the answer. But we'll come back to that. So I asked you that because that's what the 12th house is. That's what Pisces understands. The objective experience, the collective conscious. You know, where Jupiter expands the imagination. That is, it is a collection of multiple experiences, multiple imaginations. Now, going back to what I was asking you, the subjective and the objective require each other in order to survive. One cannot exist without the other. And here's why. The objective is created by a collection of many subjectives. Keyword, many. Like many as in small, also many as in plural. The objective is created by many subjectives. Okay, cool. So we see that relationship. Now, the subjective. The subjective is formed and structured by the objective. You understand that? So you got the objective being created by the subjective, and the subjective being formed by the objective. Do you see that? Do you understand the difference? It's like a symbiotic relationship where both need each other in order to exist as an entity, a singular entity. And that is perspective or experience or life in general. You get what I'm saying? So, for some reason, we always get lost. And I always talk about this. This is what I talk about when I say the spiritual warfare, in my spiritual warfare videos. You know what I'm saying? Like, we always get lost into thinking about, is it this or that? Is this versus that? Instead of saying and. Constantly masculine, divine masculine versus divine feminine. Instead of making them both equal, even in the fucking field. But you see that in this example, right? People get lost into understanding, should they be more subjective? Should they be more objective? Which one's the right answer? Right or wrong? That alone, like, there is, stop. We done. I'm gonna give you the shit right now. All right, or at least I'm gonna at least help you get the shit, because it's up to you whether or not you get the shit. But in terms of this whole flip floppy shit, like, here's the thing, like, especially when we talk about Venus, your values being in the realm of the collective consciousness, right? It's dangerous, but highly creative, to the point that it's easy to get lost. So easy to get lost here. It's easy to get lost whenever Venus is in its exaltation. Because here's the thing. You start to value the collective conscious. Sometimes a little too much. You might overvalue the collective consciousness. See, this is what allows Pisces to be the giver sign, the humanitarian, the one who sacrifices himself or herself for everyone, the good of all. You know what I'm saying? Because they have that ability to value the collective conscious, to value the collective, to value the whole. Even looking at the sign of Pisces, just looking at the symbol, it's a circle. Like, yeah, you got the fish, right? But it's fish circling around each other, really swimming nowhere, representing that cyclical nature of life. You know, and I want to ask you, if you draw a circle, where on that circle does it start and where does it end? Yet we're so sure about Aries being the start of the zodiac sign, or Pisces being the start of the zodiac sign. That's a debate too. We actually not even sure about that. There's a debate on who's the start. But even still, me being an Aries, I'm lowering my ego right now and letting you know who's the real start. I mean, we can look at it in terms of the seasons and things like that, and the start of the new year and blah blah blah. But like, really, if you look at the zodiac wheel, there's no, it doesn't work like that. We just look at everything like that because we view time as linear. But I'm going on a tangent now. Back to what I'm saying. That's just getting to the natures of the cyclical nature. You can see that in Pisces, the sign. You know what I'm saying? Of the fishes swirling around each other, right? So that's an example of the incubator, the holder. You know what I'm saying? That's what the circle is. It holds. It's the house. It holds the shit inside, right? The circle is the objective. The circle is the overall. You know what I'm saying? Pisces being the last sign, the 12th house being the last house. Those represent the overall. It represents the accumulation, like the end all. Like, now we finally got to the end of this stage now before we start anew. You know what I'm saying? So, that being said, once we get into Aries now, the new beginning, the first start, now we have, again, starting all over at one, the individual. And bringing that individual on a circle all the way around till they're able to get into the objective. You know what I'm saying? Everyone's trying to get to the objective. So that's just another allegory for you to understand about twelfth house natures and shit. But I'm going on a tangent, low key. I'm gonna go back more so into the exaltations of Venus. Okay, but all of this is good to help you understand how this shit plays out. So that being said, right, the circle, the objective, the culmination, the holder of all the many individuals, right? Because you, even you being the individual, you wouldn't exist if it weren't for the tiny individual microorganisms, all the tiny individual cells, all the bacteria that make you up. If it wasn't for all those individual cellular structures, you wouldn't exist. So you have billions and trillions of mini yous inside of you that make you up. So in a sense, you're the objective with many subjectives inside of you. Think about that. Rewind that. Back to what I'm saying though. Now, listen. When you have Venus there, Venus wants you to understand that. Me being a knight of Venus, right? I'm not here to just talk about all exaltations and shit like that. You can go listen to other astrologers. I'm here to talk about Venus shit. So I want to talk about the exaltation of Venus right now. And I'm going to give it to you in a way that other people would have it. And Venus wants you to understand, and that's right, your own values wants you to understand how can you best relate your values with everyone else's values. That is, how can you take your individual fixed, stable perspective, your individual values, like Taurus, how can you relate that? How can you find out a way how to relate that to people in some creative way, some communicative way, like Libra? And then once you figure out how you can relate that to people, how can you do that for the overall objective, for the whole world, on your humanitarian type shit? How can you do that? Like Pisces, the exaltation of Venus. Do you understand? Do you see it now? How can you take your values, relate them, figure out how to relate them, and then give them to the world? Do you know what this sounds like? Art. As they call Venus the planet of art. As they call Pisces the sign or one of the signs of artists. The artist, right? The artist sign. Why do you think they call it that? Did you see that little allegory? What do you think art is? See, I'm on a roll now. You gotta stick with me. What do you think art is? What is art if nothing more than the ability to see something that no one else sees, and then trying to find a way to recreate that and represent that to the world so that they too can see this thing that you saw that they didn't see before? Is that not art? And take the words out of it. It doesn't have to be just seeing things. You might not even see something. It might be seeing an emotion, seeing a feeling about something. It might be hearing something, having the taste for something. It can be anything, but that's what art is. It's about having a perspective, a unique perspective. And finding some way on how to get that perspective out there for others to consume that perspective too. And make it their own. And if not, at least analyze and understand that perspective. That's what art is. That's what life is. That's what we as humans do here on Earth. That's why they say Earth without art is eh. Like, that's some real shit. Like, Earth without us creating shit, it wouldn't look like the way it is. Earth without art would be no world. You know what I'm saying? There will be no world if there was no art. That's why it's hard to separate the two. Art world. There's no world without no art. The earth will be here. That's not what I'm saying. Because art plays out in different forms. You know what I'm saying? Right now I'm talking about just the low form of art, us as humans that we can understand. But if you really want to take it there, Venus wants you to understand everything is art. Again, if we're talking about the 12th house being the culmination of everything, the circle, the world, right? The collective, Venus being the sign, the planet of art, right? Venus is exalted there. So Venus wants you to know everything is art. And all of you are artists. I don't give a fuck what you are. I don't give a fuck you a chef. I don't give a fuck if you're a dancer, a musician, a visual artist like me. I don't give a fuck if you a lawyer, an attorney, or some shit like that. I don't give a fuck if you a construction worker. I don't give a fuck if you were just an Uber driver, bro. All of us are artists. All of us are creators. So you better dig that. Venus wants your ass to know that for sure. This is Venus being exalted. You dig what I'm saying? So that's one of the reasons why my primary messages is value your perspective. That's why I got 300 episodes on my podcast, The Artistic Eye, where I damn near end every episode talking about value your perspective. That's why the theme of almost every episode of that shit is value your perspective. That's why I'm taking this shit now on YouTube and Instagram and all this other shit, because I'm still not done with the message. Me being a Knight of Venus, I see that the value is not being the perspective, the individual perspective is not being valued. Or if it is, it's being valued in the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying value your perspective to the way that you only value your perspective. Because again, Venus is in the exaltation, is in the culmination, is in the collective. So it sees everyone else's perspective too. That's what art is. Art is not about seeing something that no one else sees and then coming and say, hey, this is what it is. You see what I'm saying? It's not about saying, no, this is what it is. I see this and this is what it is. I see this, this is what it is. Look at this. This is what I see. This is what that's not what art is. Art is about, oh, you see that. Okay, we all can see this. Oh, well, I see this inside of that. I see this. This is what I see. I'm going to show you this. You see what I'm saying? Like there's a slight tweak. It's not about imposing your views. It's about relating your views. You dig what I'm saying? And this is the conflict of the ego. You know? But once you get to the 12th house, you probably start experiencing lots of situations that force you to develop a greater sense of ego and go through ego deaths and shit like that and really understand what's really going on and what that word ego really means and shit like that and how it best you can control it rather than let it control you. But that's a whole different conversation too. Back to what I'm saying. That's what art is. Relating your perspective, not imposing it. So, at least that's the highest form of art, I should say. Speaking about, Venus being exalted, that's the highest form of art. But the thing is that when you try to relate your perspective so much, you're going to wonder, how can you do that? You know what I'm saying? How can you relate your perspective without trying to analyze other people's perspective and starting to value their perspective? You see what I'm saying? You have to value other people's perspective if you want to be relatable. And this is one of the dangers that the exaltation of Venus comes with, where you start to overvalue other people's perspective. So much so that you lose your own perspective. You value everyone else's feelings. You value everyone else's opinions. So much so that you lose your own feelings and opinions about shit, or you forget your own feelings and opinions about shit. It's real easy to get lost in valuing the collective conscious so much that you end up forgetting to value your own damn conscious. So understand that's the danger of Venus being exalted. You dig what I'm saying? But there's also things like If you want to call Venus love, see, love is a conflated word. You know what I'm saying? Love, like what kind of love? What kind of love we talking about? You know what I'm saying? There's all types of love. We got platonic love, we got non-platonic love. You know what I'm saying? So like, and just those two alone gets deeper than that. But that's the best. You best want to start off simple, right? The polarity. Okay, well, does Venus represent both of that? How does Venus play out in all of that? You know what I'm saying? So my point is, the reason I bring that up is love is a huge word. You know what I'm saying? And it plays out differently in different scenarios for different people. Now, if you want to equate Venus to that, see, I like to say value. That's what I like to say. It makes it's a little more general. It makes more sense. But if you want to say love, okay, heavy word, but okay. If you want to call Venus the planet of love, if love is exalted, you can get exhausted in love. You know what I'm saying? Whenever Venus is in Pisces, you can end up being so infatuated with things and tire yourself out and end up becoming lazy. In fact, it's so funny. You can just love to love. You can just love to love and just love to love and just love everything and just start doing shit that's really not you to try and see if you can really work with it or not. The whole time you not really, the energy ain't fucking with you. You see what I'm saying? Or it could be some other shit like you just love the idea of shit. You love the idea of things because you love to love so much. So you love the idea of a certain job. You love the idea of a career. You see what I'm saying? You just love it so much. But then when it's time to actually put these things into action, when it's time to actually do what it takes to have this job, to have this career, all of a sudden now you don't want to do it. Now all of a sudden you want to be whole belief based, right? You want to be all in your beliefs, be like, oh, I believe, you know what I'm saying, things will fall into place and shit like that. Now you're getting lazy. You see what I'm saying? This is one of the other dangers of Venus in Pisces. Represents laziness. You know what I'm saying? Getting too caught up into the beliefs that things will just sort itself out without any of your own input. You know what I'm saying? You can often end up being the observer instead of being someone who has input into the shit, like the individual. You see what I'm saying? Again, with that symbology. And this just another example of you being lazy. You know what I'm saying? If you being an observer of a situation, you sitting back watching and not doing shit, you ain't doing shit. You know what I'm saying? It's certain people that talk about making shit happen. There's other people who watch people make shit happen. And then there's people who make shit happen. You dig what I'm saying? So Venus in Pisces, once you understand, it's easy to end up being someone who just watches people make shit happen. As we continue to idolize people and make them the stars, and not make us our own stars, understand our own star power, our own potential. You dig what I'm saying? But damn, my fault. Fucking video cut off. But yeah, that's the other thing though. That's the other thing is that you end up getting lost to the idea of things rather than the actual action of things when it comes to Venus being exalted. So be mindful of that. Another thing about Venus being exalted is the illusions, the imagination, right? It's easy to get lost into the imagination. See, when you put your value system into the realm of imagination, you might start to value things that aren't actually there because they're only in your fucking imagination. And this plays out tricky. Like you might start to have an imagination about a relationship, a fake relationship, or you see a relationship and you have imagination about a relationship, right? But it's not in reality. But you so invested into this relationship, and again, you love to love with Venus being here. Now you're seeing yourself in a relationship that's not really real. You think there's love in this relationship, but really there's not. You see love where there isn't. Not to say that there isn't love in everything. Venus also wants you to know that. It is love and everything, but you got, whew, that's a different conversation. That's a different conversation. You gotta know how to see shit, man. It's the reason why I got these eyes everywhere, man. But yeah, look, you might start to love the idea of someone so much, or love the ideas of someone so much, love how they construct their imagination. Might love them so much that you disregard their actions again. Again, with disregarding the actions, Venus in exaltation. So now you're disregarding the actions of people, and now you so infatuated and you love them so much, not realizing this is a shitty person. And this is someone you probably should not be connecting and relating to. You see what I'm saying? Venus in exaltation, once you know. That's why Saturn is exalted in Libra, the home of Venus, and the planet of limitation and restrictions, to bring some of this down. But Venus exalted, you know what I'm saying? Venus has already gone through all that shit. It already knows. So it wants you to know the same shit. Like, you gotta start placing boundaries and restrictions on certain shit. You know what I'm saying? Limitations and shit. You don't want to just be falling in love with everything and the ideas of everyone and the imaginations of everyone. And just because this imagination, you relate to it so much, you disregard their actions. No, don't do that. You end up disrespecting and harming yourself in the end. Okay? Again, this is about value. Venus wants you to value yourself. And you sitting here valuing other people so fucking much, extremes meet. You're going to end up not devaluing yourself. You do what I'm saying? Until you have to figure out how to value yourself. And you might have to cut people off and stop valuing other people so much. You see what I'm saying? Like, don't let it get there. Start early. Start valuing yourself a little bit more right now. But yeah, that's the thing. You might start valuing fake relationships. You might think there's love there when there really isn't. Or you might have a crush on someone and have an imagination about your life with this person, but never actually put any action to live in this imagination out. So instead of approaching this person and saying something to this person, actually doing what you gotta do to see if this person is the one of your dreams, you just keep it in your dreams, your daydreams. And again, that's one of the detriments of the exaltation of Venus. You see what I'm saying? So it's like you might end up living in a fantasy land, an illusion, where this person, you swear you're all best friends with this person, but you never even approach this person. You swear this person's the one, your lovey-dovey one, your hubby, your wifey, whatever. Never even approach this person. You dig what I'm saying? Probably because you value how you're going to be seen too much. You worried if you're going to be judged or not. Again, valuing other people's shit too much. Again, Venus exalted. So it's real tricky and real easy to get lost here. You see what I'm saying? But one thing, though, is that it's better to have loved and lost than to not have loved at all. That's another thing that Venus wants you to understand, being exalted. That even if you do get lost into the illusions of love, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Because hopefully, I don't want to say hopefully, but yeah, hopefully those illusions reveal themselves to you. And that'll be painful, and it'll hurt, and it'll show you the wounds that come with love. And it'll show you that love is not what you think it is. Love is not just something to just be dishing out and throwing willy-nilly and having one word for it. And really, love is a plethora of spiritual weapons. Do you understand what I'm saying? Love is that word love contains an arsenal of spiritual weapons. You dig what I'm saying? And I talk all about spiritual warfare. So we don't really look at love like that. And Venus wants you to know that. Venus wants you to look at it like that, because when you don't look at it like that, that's how you get trapped into the illusions of love. You dig? But no. I remember Venus being exalted there, Neptune and Jupiter there. So wisdom, a spiritual wisdom must be obtained here when Venus comes. So yeah, you're gonna be trapped and lost in love, all right. Go ahead, get lost. Go ahead, get lost. But your ass is gonna get lost and get hurt. You're gonna have to fight something out there, lost out there. You might get scraped and bruised and wounded in that fight. But that's what it takes. You're gonna have the ability to come back and speak now and say what happens when you get lost. Not only will you have the ability to come back, now you will have direction. You see what I'm saying? Now you will not just be lost. You will now have the ability to gain direction in situations where you're lost. You dig what I'm saying? So, it's like, you just gotta be careful with this shit, man. You just gotta be careful with this shit. Because how do you know if you live in an illusion or not? How do you know if you already manifested an illusion or not? Or if you're in the process of manifesting an illusion? Like, how do you know? Venus being exalted, that's what I'm saying. So the thing about that is, that's my whole topic. Gaining a sense of direction. You know what I'm saying? Me being Eros, the soul of Andromeda, the night of Venus. Think about what that means. Now, I broke that down in videos before, but just look at that right now when I want to talk about Eros, sense. You know what I'm saying? It's all the same shit, but Eros, direction. What is an arrow? Arrows. What are arrows? What do arrows look like? What do arrows do other than point you in a direction? You dig what I'm saying? Now I say the night of Venus. Many things come with the night, like war, like darkness. Venus being values, right? How do you direct yourself through the wars of getting to your values? Better yet, how do you maintain your values through the wars that the world placed directly onto you? How do you figure out, long story short, how to value your perspective? How do you hold on to your values as you continue to go through life? And how do you relate it? You know what I'm saying? This is direction. This is what I want to talk about. This is the shit that I'm saying, man. Like, the way you gain direction when you're talking about Venus being exalted, because it's easy to get lost here. Easy to get lost in love. Easy to get lost in imagination. Easy to get lost in illusions. Easy to get lost when a Venus is exalted. But how do you gain direction here? Sounds cliche, but by valuing your perspective. Here's what I mean. Once Venus goes into Pisces, now it's more about valuing other. You know what I'm saying? Whether you like it or not, that's just what the energies you're going to be working with. That's what we're all going to be working with whenever the Venus is exalted. Valuing others. So whenever that is being done, when that's the case, we have to remember how to value self. Because valuing others is already the default scenario. So if you jump into the opposite nature and value self, You now have that magic. You see what I'm saying? The two sides of the same coin to bring a whole valuable substance. So when you jump on that other side, the other face from valuing others, you start to value self. You now are valuing self in the process of valuing others, or vice versa, valuing others in the process of valuing self. But either way, now you're going through each other and creating the holistic view. You dig what I'm saying? And this is what art is. This is what creativity is. This is the highest form of expression when we're talking about the arts. Venus exalted, Venus in Pisces. Taking your perspective, being grounded in it, like Taurus, and then initiating a creative way to relate that, like Libra, and then giving it to the world so that they too can relate to it, like Pisces. You dig? That's Venus exalted. You know? And there's a lot more that comes with the shit. The last little rant, that last little part I was just talking about, that's the art. All of this is the arts. This is why Venus is associated with the arts. You know what I'm saying? There's other reasons too, but this is one of the key examples. You know what I'm saying? This is how we make art. This is why I felt so inclined. This is why it was important for me as an artist and one of the only artists I see talking about astrology and art at the same time on YouTube. This is why I had to talk about this shit being the night of Venus. That's where the arts come from. The values going into your imagination. If you don't value your imagination, aka Venus exalted, you will have no art to create. Do you see the fucking allegory? If you don't value the mysticism, you will have no art to create. If you don't value getting lost, because I told you about all the dangers, but here's the bright side. You gotta value that shit. Like, beyond just the scrapes and the bruises of the wisdom that you'll come out with, because you know Pisces end up being a very wise people, right? Because they go through a lot. But beyond that, beyond just valuing that, you have to value the lostness. You have to value getting lost because that's where the magic is. If you're not lost, that means you have all sense of direction. Now, me being Eros, I'm not giving you all directions of life. I'm giving you a specific direction to Venus. You dig what I'm saying? That's it. That's the only one I'm sitting here. That's the only one I'm talking about. I'm talking about a singular direction to Venus. You dig what I'm saying? I'm not talking about having an all direction because you have a sense of all direction. You know everything. You know where everything is. You're all knowing. And guess what? Guess what the thing about that is? It's not fun anymore. If you know everything, there's nothing new to explore. If there's nothing new to explore, there's no new ideas being generated. There's no new ideas being generated. There's no new art. There's no new creativity. There's no world. It will cease to exist the way we know it. Do you understand now why it's so fucking important? Bruh, this whole world is built and constructed through the arts, through the exaltation of Venus, through people having the ability to see something that no one else sees, having the ability to have an individual, having the ability to be fixed in their own perspective, and then relating that and giving it to the world. That's what giving all this shit. This is how YouTube exists. The phones, all this shit. You see what I'm saying? But we won't get there unless you understand. You gotta value your perspective. You did. You have to actually value your perspective. Otherwise, you valuing everyone else's perspective. You're just recreating what was already there. You're not adding to the table. So that's what Venus Exalted wants you to understand. You dig what I'm saying? But like I said, you don't want to value your perspective so much that you forget everyone else's perspective. You don't want to get lost in your imagination and forget the collective's imagination. You know? Because the thing with Venus being exalted is you can be highly creative, highly intuitive, highly relatable, or you can be very unstable. People might call you crazy. You might be lustful, love hungry, whatever the case may be. Or simply just don't know yourself, lost the sense of self because you know everyone else more than you know your own damn self. You did. But that's a whole different conversation. That's when Venus starts going into other signs. You know what I'm saying? That's when Venus leaves the 12th house and goes back into the first house of Aries. Or when Venus starts to go into his fall detriment or whatever the case, when it Virgo and shit, when Venus start going to Virgo. Let me stop ranting. Point is though, you ain't really gotta worry about that when we're talking about Venus being in Pisces, because Venus in Pisces is all about the collective consciousness. But even then, you might get lost into the collective consciousness where you're lost into the imaginations of others in your own imagination. You know what I'm saying? And even that plays out. But I feel like I talked about that for the most part. But that's just things to look out for, man. Like, shit get tricky. It's easy to get lost. You know what I'm saying? The 12th house, that's one of the easiest houses to get lost in. You know, it's easy to get lost in any house. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you don't know that house. You know what I'm saying? You got the lights off and shit like that. Yeah, you can get lost in any house. But the 12th house, especially with Jupiter there, and with the mysticism and illusions of Neptune there, oh yeah, that's like a fun house or a mirror house, whatever they call that shit, like at the circus. Yeah, it's real fucking easy to get lost there. That's one of those houses where it's big on the outside and little on the inside, or it's little on the inside, or little on the outside and big on the inside, and you get lost in that shit. Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the 12th house. With Venus being there, it's easy to lose your values. But it's easier to have a greater sense of value, a higher sense of value. You dig what I'm saying? Where now you do value everyone else's perspective as well as your own. And that's what I'm going to talk about later, because this was more so about the dangers to look out for with Venus. And these are dangers to look out for with Venus being exalted, that is. But there's pros that come with Venus being exalted. So I'll talk about that too. Like I said, this is the arts. This is what makes the artist, the magician, the mage, the alchemist, the creator. But until then, you must know the detriments. You must know the bad shit that can come from it. You must know why this shit is dangerous. You know? So I'm gonna talk about why you should value getting lost, because that's the magician. But also understand that when you value getting lost, before I even talk about that, when you value getting lost, motherfucker, now you're just getting lost in everything and just blowing with the wind. Never really having a sense of direction. Never really going anywhere. Like the fish swimming in circles. Now I'm gonna ask you, do you really want to value that? Does that sound good? Because life is all about evolution. Life is all about progression. The only thing that's constant, the only thing that's guaranteed in life is change. So you want to value getting lost, you better not get lost in being trapped in the same location and living in an illusion thinking that's not what it is. You dig what I'm saying? I'm not talking about physical location either. It be whatever the case, but you dig what I'm saying. But yeah, common sense. That was it for the most part. I'll probably do a part two on this probably later or some shit. But like I said, that was all the bad shit, right? For the most part. I'm gonna talk about the good shit too. I'm gonna talk about it. But yeah, common sense. Night of Venus.